United Nations today voting to suspend Russia from the Human Rights Council in response to the atrocities in Ukraine after more than 400 civilians were discovered slaughtered in Bucha. Let's bring in my co-anchor, ABC News senior national correspondent Terry Moran, who's in Lviv, along with ABC News contributor and former senior CIA field operative Daryl Blocker. He's with us here in our nation's capital. Terry, of course, we'll start with you. Russia now the second country to ever be suspended from the Human Rights Council after Libya, of course, was removed in 2011. What do you think this means for Russia moving forward, if anything?
Well, it does have symbolic power, Kira. It is a rebuke, a moral rebuke of Russia. The whole world has seen, as the Russian troops retreated in the face of Ukrainian army counterattacks, what they did in the towns and places that they occupied here in the country. And this vote by the United Nations Human Rights Council is a moral rebuke. It is essentially an expression of disgust at the conduct of the Russian army and its leadership. And another way, as the international community has done, of condemning the entire Russian invasion of Ukraine. So as a symbolic matter, that does matter, because it isolates Russia morally in the world. It's not just the votes of diplomats at the United Nations. It's in the minds and hearts of people around the world who have seen these images, who understand what it means about Russia and its leadership. And it does then, I think, put some pressure, not a lot, but it makes the calculation more difficult for countries like China and India and Pakistan and other countries that continue to have dealings with Russia. How close do you want to be to a Russia governed by Putin and Putinism? And this is one of those days where you have to think twice about it because of that.
Daryl, reality check. Impact of this UN vote. I mean, it seemed to influence, maybe in some way, Libya back in 2011 with the upheaval there that actually brought down Muammar Gaddafi, who we remember. I remember the cell phone video. I remember the day that it happened, seeing his body just dragged through the streets, his own people picking up and protesting.
So I agree with Terry that symbolically it's very, very important. I believe that any initiative, be it unilateral, bilateral, or in the instance of the United Nations, multilateral, any one that's designed to isolate Putin and to keep the Russian Federation aware of the fact that they can now slide into what was a Libyan, pariah state status, I think that's good, solid strategy. But I'm also not certain that that singular act really had time to take root, because that was in 2011, and by October of that year is when Gaddafi was tracked down and killed. So I don't know if it actually took root, but it's quite interesting to compare Putin and Gaddafi and the Russian Federation within the now rebuilding former Libyan pariah state. So I think it's great politically, and I think it's very good diplomatic policy.
Yeah, and will that political move actually have power? So, Terry, President Zelensky also wanting Russia suspended from the UN Security Council. I mean, of course, the U.S. is going to say, well, that's not going to happen. Why not? And what other consequences could the UN impose?
Well, it's difficult, Kira, to suspend a nation from the United Nations Security Council, because unlike the Human Rights Council, where there are elections to that and it's a rotating membership of 47, I believe, although it's not a very exclusive club, there are countries that abuse human rights already on that council, and they don't really do much. The UN Security Council, that's where the power is, right? And the countries that are the permanent members were enshrined as such in the UN Charter back in the 1940s. The only time it's changed, China, which was originally represented by the Chinese on Taiwan and their leader Chiang Kai-shek, that seat was taken away from them and given to Mao Zedong's communist China many years ago. And I guess when the Soviet Union fell, Russia took its seat on the Security Council. But really, you can't, there's no process in the UN Charter which assigned those seats for replacing or banning somebody from the UN Security Council. So Russia's going to sit there, as they did during the Cold War, and veto most things it doesn't like. It'll get worse now than it has been because of Russia's isolation. And so the UN Security Council, which already struggles really to make an impact on genuine security, as Zelensky has called out, you're the UN Security Council, where's the security? Maybe you should dissolve yourself. That'll get worse because Russia is likely to feel more set upon and more jealous in guarding its own interest given its isolation. So they can't do it because there's no process to do it, and it'll make it worse at the UN. They'll do even less.
So, Daryl, the Biden administration now moving to cut off U.S. exports to 3 Russian airlines. Interesting move. How could that impact the conflict?
Well, if our efforts against Iran and its airline industry are indicative, then it will have long-lasting and far-reaching impact on their economy, and particularly their gas and oil industry. So everything that services the airline industry will actually be impacted as well. So it might look like you're only going against these 3 airlines, but essentially what you're doing is further putting a squeeze on the Russian economy and on their oil and gas industry.
All right, more to follow. Terry, good to see you. Daryl, always appreciate your insight. Thanks, gentlemen.
Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.